Well, good morning, everybody. How's everybody today? Man, this place is packed, Pastor. Wow, this is incredible. Let me tell you that I've been looking forward to today for a long, long time. It's been on my calendar for several months now, and this is one of the places I just couldn't wait to come, and I'm excited to be here. And my wife and I, we just love your pastors. Don't you love your pastor? We just love your pastors. Amen. Obviously, I love them more than you do, but man, I love them. They are just doing such an incredible job. And I want to just tell you, because I travel all over, and what's happening at San Angelo First is not happening everywhere. This is the exception, not the norm. You guys are just tearing it up here, man. It's just incredible, and I'm so proud of you and excited, and I know that you're just getting started and no telling what God is going to do in the future. Thank you, Pastor, for the opportunity to be here today. I'm just honored that you would allow me to come and share the word. So, are you ready for the word this morning? How many of you are going to help me preach this morning? Well, it's going to be a while. How many are going to help me preach this morning? All right. Listen, if you'll help the preacher preach, he'll preach better, and that will help you. All right? Let me get my time here because I don't want to get in trouble, and I'm not sure I can do that. But anyway, all right, let's get started this morning. Hey, I want to talk to you today about financial freedom. Financial freedom. Say that with me. Financial freedom. Wow. Doesn't that sound awesome? What would it be like to be financially free? Well, I know already somebody is thinking, because I've been in the church my entire life, and I know already somebody is thinking, well, I'm going to talk about finances in the church today. That doesn't sound very spiritual to me. But are you aware of the fact that Jesus talked more about finances than he did about heaven and hell combined? I'm talking about Jesus. So if Jesus talked about finances, well, maybe we should too. Write this down this morning. I'm going to say it more than once, but write this down this morning. Our finances determine our future. And that's so, so true. Our finances determine our future. See, our finances affect every single part of our lives. They affect us individually. They affect our spouse. They affect our children, our grandchildren. Did you know that the number one cause of divorce today is financial issues? Are you aware of the fact that every single day people that are still in love with one another are filing for divorce? Why? Because of financial issues. Families divide over these issues. Why? It even affects our relationship with God when we struggle in this area. It is true this morning, our finances determine our future. Think of it like this. It's our finances that tell us what time we have to get up in the morning and what time that we get to go to bed at night. It's our finances that tell us where we can and cannot go and where we can and we cannot live. What we can and cannot do for our family, what we can and cannot give. Which ministry assignments that we can say yes to, and which ministry assignments we have to say no to. Hey, finances are a pretty big deal. Maybe somebody ought to be talking about finances in the church. Well, there are four things that I want to talk to you today about concerning finances. I wish I had an hour on each one of these things. I don't. I understand I don't. Don't worry. I do know my time limit, but I wish I had the time to talk about these four things for an hour. But let's get started and move real quickly this morning. The first thing that I want to talk about this morning concerning finances, I want to talk about the reality. The reality. And the reality is most people are living a lie. Yes, in America today, most people are living a lie. For most people today, the American dream has turned into a nightmare. Listen, in today's world, in America today, most Americans are playing make-believe. Did you ever play make-believe when you were a little boy or a little girl? Let me see your hand. Remember playing make-believe when you were a kid? Man, when I was a kid, I loved to play make-believe. I was crazy about sports when I was a little boy. And man, if it was a ball, I don't care what shape it was, give it to me, man, I'm in, I'm playing. I remember playing Little League ball, man. I was good when in Little League, man. I was. And I remember loving Little League baseball, but I remember playing make-believe, and I'm going to date myself, I know, but my baseball hero when I was a little boy was Mickey Mantle. Anybody ever heard of Mickey Mantle? And I remember playing make-believe and making believe like I'm Mickey Mantle. I got my hat and I got my uniform and I got my glove and my ball and my bat. And I remember playing like I was Mickey Mantle. Man, Mickey Mantle could hit home runs from the right side. He was a switch hitter, or he could hit them from the left. And I remember playing like I'm Mickey Mantle hitting home runs. I loved to play football, and I remember when I was a little boy, my hero as a professional football player was Johnny Unitas, man. What an incredible quarterback Johnny Unitas was. And I remember, man, I had a whole uniform, man, the whole football uniform. And I remember playing like I'm Johnny Unitas, man, and I'm throwing touchdown passes, man, like Johnny Unitas. I'm having a ball playing like I'm Johnny Unitas. When I was a little boy, everything on TV was Westerns. Westerns. And my favorite Western as a little boy was Wyatt Earp. Marshal Wyatt Earp. Come to Dodge City to clean up the town. And I remember as a little boy, dressing up like Wyatt Earp. I had my hat, I had my cowboy shirt, I had my vest, I had my Levi's, I had my cowboy boots, I had my 10-star Marshal Wyatt Earp. And I remember, man, I had to pull that hat down just like Wyatt Earp did. And I remember standing as a little boy, dressed like that, standing and looking into a mirror, practicing my fast draw. I'm Wyatt Earp. I've come to clean up the town. Hey, playing make-believe is fun, right? Yeah, and listen, make-believe, it's okay to play make-believe. If you're 10, if you're a little boy or a little girl. But the problem today is too many adults today have never stopped playing make-believe. They played make-believe as a little boy or a little girl, but they're still playing make-believe today. They live in a house that they know they should not be living in, but they make believe like they can afford it. They drive an automobile they know is beyond their means, but they make believe. They eat at restaurants they shouldn't be eating at, and they take vacations they ought not be taking, and they're playing make-believe. They're playing dress-up. It's okay if you're 10. It's not okay if you're 30 or if you're 50. The reality, most people are living a lie. Most people are living a lie. Because of their pride, they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. But what they don't understand is the Joneses are broke and in debt. Hey, the Joneses are playing make-believe as well. Second part of the reality this morning is this. That is, a lack of money is not the real problem. Oh, for some it is. If you're making minimum wage, that is a problem, and you've got to figure out how to make more income. But for most people's financial problems are not due to the amount of money they make, rather the mismanagement of the money they do make and going into debt to live the lifestyle of their peers. Somebody said if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep will be your downfall. One man said his problem was his outgoing income. How many can relate to that? The book of Haggai, chapter number 1 and verse 6 says, you put your money in a bag with holes in it. Listen, I've met people who had 6-figure incomes that struggle with their finances. Wait, what? Really? See, the lack of money is not usually the major problem. Mismanagement is. Listen to this morning. The average American today is spending 17.5% of their, spending 17.5% of their income, are you ready for it? On interest. Interest, 17.5%. 50% of Americans today cannot cover a $400 emergency. 56% of Americans today spend more than they make. That tells me that Americans can't even do simple math. See, when I was just a little bitty boy, I knew that I couldn't walk into a candy store with a quarter and come out with $1 worth of candy. I knew that as a little boy, and yet today adults can't even do simple math because they're spending more than they make. Are you still with me this morning? About a third, thank you, that's good. The rest of you jump on along the way. Second thing I want to talk about, talking about finances this morning, I want to talk about the responsibility. Say the responsibility. Are you aware of the fact that we will be held responsible for how we handled our finances? Did anybody ever tell you that? Have you read your Bible? Yeah, we will give an account to God for what we did with what He gave us. In Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30, Jesus tells a parable. He tells a story of the talents. Most of us are very familiar with this story. Now, we need to understand that a talent was a measure of money, like our dollars are to us. In this parable, a man calls 3 of his workers in, and he gives each of them a certain amount of money. One man he gave 5 talents, another one he gave 2 talents, another one he gave 1 talent, a measure of money. And he was gone for a period of time. He was expecting them to do something with what he had given them. And when he came back after his journey, he came back and he called all 3 of those servants in, and he called them into account, and he asked them, what did you do with what I gave you? I gave you 5, I gave you 2, I gave you 1. What did you do with what I gave you? Did you know one of these days we're going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ? And I believe that Jesus is going to ask one question and one question only, and the question is going to be, what did you do with what I gave you? I gave you gifts, I gave you talents, I gave you abilities, I gave you finances. What did you do with what I gave you? We also need to be aware of this morning. We can't expect God to give us more if we're not faithful to manage what we have. Luke chapter 16, verse 10 through 12, Jesus said, if you're faithful with little, you will be faithful with much. He says, if you are not trustworthy with a little, why would you expect more? Can you imagine that? Hey, you mismanaged what I gave you. Let me reward you and give you some more. Doesn't work that way. In the parable of the talents, it says in verse 15, he divided the money in proportion to their abilities. That is so important. I didn't see that for years. And for years I struggled. I really struggled for years with this parable because, man, you gave him 5, you only gave him 2, you only gave him 1. You must love them more than you love this guy over here, but it's not true. He loved them all the same. But he knew he gave them what they were capable of. He gave it according unto their ability, according to what they were capable of. We're not all on the same plane, and we're not all going to be judged in the same way. Listen, we're not all capable of the same thing. We all have our own capabilities, but we are going to be judged according to what we did with what we were capable of. God knows what we can handle, and until we correctly handle a little, He's not going to give us a lot. But when we prove faithful to properly handle what we have, then He can trust us with more. Verse 21, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now, say so now. So now I will give you more. Why is He going to give them more? Because you were faithful with a little, so now you've proven to me you can be trustworthy, so now I'm going to trust you with more. Ask yourself this question this morning. Have I been faithful with what I have been given? Ask yourself. Have I been faithful with what I have been given? Or do I whine about what I don't have, like the one who only received the 1 talent did in the parable in Matthew 25? Ask yourself this question. Why should I expect God to give me more if I haven't done anything productive with what He already gave me? Hey, I just dropped by to bless you this morning, okay? Just want to bless you and encourage you this morning. Third thing I want to talk about concerning finances this morning is this. I want to talk about the recommendations. The recommendations. And I want to recommend 4 things that you should do with your money. Once you get your paycheck, or once that money is deposited into your account, or however, and not only just your paycheck, but any finances, any money that comes your way, what should you do with it? Well, I'm going to recommend 4 things that you should do with your money, and I'm going to give you these 4 things in proper order. Say proper order. See, not only should you do these 4 things with your money, you should do these 4 things in this order. The first thing, the absolute first thing that you should do with your money is you should sow some. Say sow some. Number 1, sow some. In the book of Malachi, chapter 3, or as one pastor said, the book of Malachi. The book of Malachi, chapter 3, verses 8 through 12, it says, well, and God is speaking here, and God asks the question, will a man rob God? What an absurd question. How in the world are you going to rob God? Can you just see yourself with a ski mask and a .357 Magnum and sneak it up behind the throne of God and trying to rob from God? What a question God asked. And God asked the question, will a man rob God? And God answers his own question. He says, but you have robbed me. But they said, but in what way? How have we robbed you? And God says, you've robbed me in tithes and offerings. And you are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring all the tithe into the storehouse. Why? So that there may be food in my house. And try me now in this, says the Lord of hosts. And see if I will not open for you the windows of heaven, pour out for you such blessing there will not be room enough to receive it. I will rebuke the devourer for your sake, so that he will not devour or destroy the fruit of your ground, nor shall the vine fail to bear fruit for you in the field, says the Lord of hosts. And all nations will call you blessed, for you will be a delightful land, says the Lord of hosts. So according to Malachi, the finances of tithers are blessed, and the finances of non-tithers are cursed. Now, I didn't say that. Don't shoot the messenger. I didn't say it. I'm much too nice to say anything like that. Anybody knows me knows how sweet and nice I am. But that's what God said. Listen to what God said. God said tithers are blessed. And he says they are blessed with 3 financial blessings. You'll find them all in those verses. Those 3 blessings are provision, protection, and prosperity. All promised to those that are faithful tithers. 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 6 says, Paul writes, and he says, if you sow sparingly, you're going to reap sparingly. But if you sow bountifully, he said, you're going to reap bountifully. So the very first thing that you should do with your money is sow some, tithe and offering. Begin with a tithe, and it's a tithe, not a tie. A tie is something we used to wear. A tithe is, it's T-I-T-H-E, tithe. It literally means a 10th part. In our way of thinking, it would be 10%. So 10%, the first 10% of all of our increase, that's the tithe, and it belongs to God. So begin with the tithe, 10%. Then I suggest an offering. I recommend starting at 5%. For many, many years, my wife and I have sown 25% of our gross income in the work of the Lord. I don't say that to brag. I just want you to know that I'm not teaching theory today, and I'm not talking about something I just read somewhere. I'm talking about something my wife and I have been living for 51 years. And you might have an argument against my teaching today, but I've got the proof of my teaching, and I see it revealed in my life, and I'm grateful and thankful for it, and I want that same thing for you. Second thing you should do with your money is you should save some. So after you sow some, then you save some. That's number 2. Pay God first, pay yourself second. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise have wealth and luxury, but fools spend whatever they get. See, the real question is not how much money do you make. The real question is how much money do you have? How much money do you keep? See, here's the truth of the matter is, and that is you will not always be young and strong. And I know those of you that are young, I know you're looking at me like, say, hey, old guy. Well, I was you one day. And I'm telling you, you won't always be young and strong. And you won't always be in demand. And you will not always be the latest and the greatest. Let me ask you this morning. What happens if you lose your job? Oh, I'll never lose my job. Well, yeah. Well, one of my deacons said that to me many years ago. There were layoffs in his company. And he came to me and he said, don't worry about me, Pastor. He said, I'm the last man in our company to be laid off. He was the first. True story. True story. What happens if you lose your job? What happens if you get sick or injured and are unable to work? What happens to you when you get old and no one wants or needs your outdated skills anymore? Did you know that 33% of people who retire were forced to retire earlier than they had planned? Maybe many of them thought, I still got several years left to prepare for my retirement. But 33% of people retire. They retire earlier than they planned to retire because of either health reasons or layoffs. We just don't know in our world today, right? Let me ask you this morning. Why do you do all the work and everybody else gets all the money? You put in all the time. You put all the blood, sweat, and tears into it. I mean, you're doing all the work, but everybody else is getting the money. I mean, the money is spent before you even get it home. Aren't you tired of that? Pay God first, then pay yourself second. After you sow some, save some, pay yourself. Create an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months' expenses because emergencies are going to come. I can't tell you how many people have come to me over the years and said, Pastor, used to when I would have to replace my tires or when the kid had to go to the hospital or go to the dentist or whatever, I would fret. But because of your teaching about the emergency fund, I no longer have to stress about that. Thank you, Pastor. It's a much better way to live. Emergency fund, because emergencies are going to come. That's not negative, that's reality. After you get your emergency fund in place, then start investing in some type of retirement account. And it's not how much you put in that matters the most, it's how young you are when you get started and how consistent you are. I recommend 10 to 15% of your income. First of all, savings, preparing an emergency fund, and then after that, directing that money to retirement. So now we've sold some, we've saved some. Now we get to spend some. Oh. You beat me to it, though. That was number one for you, right? That's why you're in trouble. You got it out of order. You don't spend till you sow and you save, then you spend. And now, because you're sowing and you're saving, now you only have about 70% or so left to spend. So you better make yourself a budget. Some of you can't even say the word budget. See, here's the thing about a budget. Through a budget, you can tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And let me say something else here, very important. Before you set up your budget, ask yourself this question. It's a very, very important question. I've read a lot of books, heard a lot of teaching, never heard anybody come up with this. So I'm claiming this as original. This is mine. Here's what you need to do before you set up a budget. Ask yourself this question: what do I want to do with my money? What do I want to do with it? Because see, you're not going to be, very few, but most of us are not going to be able to do everything. What is it I really want to do with my money? If I don't decide what I really want to do with my money and make it a priority, I'm going to spend it on everything else and not get to do what I really want to do. So ask yourself, what do I want to do with my money? Do I want to live in it? Is that what I want to do with it? Do I want to drive it? Do I want to play with it? Do I want to eat it? I would say some of you, it's obvious you want to eat it, but that would be ugly, and I would not say that. I just wouldn't do that. You don't do that these days. So I didn't do that. What are my priorities? What gives me the most satisfaction? What is most important to me? If it's my house, then if I'm going to have the big house, then I may have to not eat out as much, or I might have to drive an older car, or I might have to bum off other relatives for vacation. If what I want to do with my money is if I want to drive my money, I want to have all the bells and whistles and the latest and greatest, I might have to live in a smaller house. What do I want to do with my money. Before you set up your budget, decide what is most important to you, what you want to do with your money. Hey, by the way, how do you see money anyway? Have you ever thought of that? How do you see money? How do you see it? Do you see money as flat and stacking, or do you see it round and rolling? How do you see it? Are you a saver or are you a spender? I'm a saver. I've always been a saver. I mean, the fact of the matter is, when I was a kid, man, I could make an all-day sucker last 2 weeks. Here's the problem. Opposites attract. Savers usually marry spenders and vice versa. Don't look at your spouse. I saw you. So when deciding what you want to do with your money, if you are married, make sure you are both on the same page, and you're both going to have to make some compromises along the way. Now, I practice and I preach. I preach and I practice debt-free living. I recommend zero debt other than your house. And then I recommend, after you're there, getting your house paid off as soon as possible. Some of you are saying, you lost me there, preacher. That's just ridiculous. That's just so unrealistic. Well, not if you are living under God's blessing of provision, protection, and prosperity that's promised to tithers. It's not unrealistic, not if you get serious about your finances. Not if you are not in debt in other areas so you can throw more money on your mortgage every single month. Not if you were wise in the process of buying your house. By the way, your house payment or your rent should not exceed 30% of your regular take-home pay. That includes bonuses or anything else. No more. Your payment or your rent should not exceed 30% of your regular take-home pay. If it does, you're in trouble. If it does, some of you need to have a garage sale, and I'm not talking about putting a few tables in the garage and throwing a bunch of junk on it and says, y'all come buy it. I'm talking about selling the garage and the house that's attached to it, because you're upside down on your house and you're not going to make it financially. Are you still with me? About a fourth now. I'm losing ground. In your spending, only buy what you can pay cash for. If you can't pay cash for it, it's not time to buy it yet. You said, preacher, you're trying to take away all of our fun. No, I'm trying to set you up where you can have some fun. And don't overspend on cars. The men's going to love me on this one. I'm sorry. But don't overspend on cars. A new car is the worst investment you can make. I said for years I'd rather drive an older car than have a new car driving me. Oh, I would never drive a used car. You do. Every person in this room is driving a used car, because the moment you drove it off of the dealer's lot, it became a used car. You don't believe it? Try and get a new price for it now. Just trying to help you. A new car loses 10% of its value the moment you drive it off of the lot. It loses another 10% of its value after the first year. So in 1 year, you lose 20% of your investment. If you paid $40,000 for your new vehicle, you have lost $8,000 in 1 year. That's not the best investment you can make. I'm not against you driving a new car, but I am against a new car driving you, and that's what's happening in most people's lives. Stop trying to be like everybody else. Everybody else is broke and in debt. We already talked about that. Everybody else is playing make-believe. I'm giving you 4 recommendations what you should do with your money. Do these 4 things in this order. Sow some, save some, spend some, and the 4th thing, share some. Share some. Proverbs 11, verse 24 and 25 says, give freely and you'll become more wealthy. Be stingy and you'll lose everything. The generous will prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. See, friend, God didn't give us everything we have to keep for ourselves. The rich man in Luke chapter 12, who had such a vast harvest that he ran out of room to store it in, never gave a passing thought to sharing some of what he had with someone who didn't have anything. Just think about what he could have done with just his excess, what he could have done for others. But no, it was all about his three favorite people, I, me, and mine. Can I tell you one of the most wonderful things, one of the most rewarding things, one of the things that brings more joy to you than anything else in this world is to do for somebody what they can't do for themselves. Listen, I'm going to tell this not to make me look good, but just let you know that we're practicing what we're preaching. I can't tell you what it is, how joyful it is. And I've been able to do it twice, my wife and I, to be able to hand the keys to a car to a single mom whose car blew up. And she has no transportation now. She has no way to get to her job. And she doesn't get to go to her job. She can't pay her rent. She can't pay her babies. And she don't know what she's going to do. And to be able to come to her rescue, be able to hand her the keys of a car. I'm not talking about a new car. I'm talking about a beater. I'm talking about a car that you'd be ashamed to drive up in. But she's not ashamed of it. It's the answer to her prayer, man. And to see the sparkle in her eyes, to know now I can get to work. Now I can take care of my family. Now I can feed my babies. Oh, there's nothing more joyful in life than to be able to do something for somebody else. But you can't do for others if you're not even take care of yourself. After we've sown some and saved some and spent some, we should share some. 1 John 3, verse 17, if someone has enough money to live well and sees someone in need but shows no compassion to them, how can God's love be in them? Listen, write this down this morning. Man, this is good for you individually, Pastor. This is good for your church. I preach it to my church. When we become inward focused, we are out of focus. All right, the fourth thing I want to talk about concerning finances today, I want to talk about the reaping. The reaping. Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7 says you're going to reap what you sow. So I want to talk a little bit about reaping that will occur when our finances are in order and the reaping that we will have when our finances are out of order. Let's begin when our finances are out of order. When our finances are out of order, what do we reap? Well, first of all, stress increases. And there's just no stress like financial stress, right? When there's just too much month at the end of the money. The second one is strained relationships occur. Good luck telling your wife she has to move out of her dream house because you mismanaged the family money. The third one is a stained reputation is possible. See, someone who mismanages their money and cannot pay their bills stain their reputation and cause people to lose confidence in them, which eventually causes them to stop following their leadership. Now, let's talk about when finances are in order. What do we reap when finances are in order? Well, the first thing we reap when finances are in order is you get more. You get more. Somebody said the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Why? It's true. It's actually true. And I'll prove it. Matthew chapter 25, again, the parable, verses 28 and 29. It says, then he ordered, take the money from the servant. What servant? The servant who mismanaged his master's money. He says, take away that. I gave him 1 talent. He hid it. He did nothing with it. He mismanaged it. Take it away from him. And give it. Who are you going to give it to? He says, give it to the one who now has 10 talents. What? Really? And here's why. It says, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. When our finances are in order, we get more. More comes to us. Think of it like this morning. Who do you think God would want to give money to? You think God would want to give money to people who are going to manage it wisely or people who are going to mismanage it? People who will sow much of it or people who are going to be selfish with it? But not only do you get more when your finances are in order, but also you get to go more. You get to go more. There was a young couple. They were talking one day, They had just bought a new house and a new car. And the wife said to her husband, she said, honey, where are we going to go on vacation this year? And he said, vacation? Woman, what are you talking about? Now, first of all, I don't recommend you talk that way to your spouse. Woman, what are you talking about vacation? We just bought a new house. We just bought a new car. I want to tell you what our vacation is going to look like this year. This year, we're going to stand in our living room. We're going to pull the blinds, and we're going to look out on the driveway and look at the brand new car we bought. And we get tired of that. We're going to go sit in that brand new car, and we're going to look at that new house that we just bought. That's what we're going to do for vacation. But when your finances are in order, you get to go more. Oh, I wish I had the time this morning to talk about not just going and seeing and doing and pleasure type stuff, but also we free ourselves up to go for God. We free ourselves up where God can tell us to do this or that or go here or there. And we can go because financially we are able to say yes to what others are saying no to. And finally, when finances are in order, and this is what this is all about today, and it's what my whole ministry is all about and why I'm here this morning, and that is when your finances are in order, you can give more. Yeah, I thought you'd shout me down with that one. You can give more. Luke 12:48 says, where much is given, much is required. The more we have, the more we can give. And the more that we give, the more will be given to us so that we can give even more. Luke 6:38, Jesus said, give and it will be given back to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured back into your lap. Somebody said life is hard. And it's true. But hear me, friend, people who get their finances out of order make it harder. Somebody said, I have met the enemy, and he is me. People who have their finances in order can drastically reduce the amount of problems they will have to face. Because face it, most of our problems, or at least many of our problems, are our own doing and our own poor choices. Somebody said money can't buy happiness, and I say absolutely you are right. Money cannot buy happiness, but I will say this, the mismanagement of money contribute to much unhappiness. And here's what I want you to hear this morning. The real power of money is not to buy whatever you want. That's not what this is all about today. The real power of money is not to buy whatever you want, but to buy the freedom. Say freedom. But to buy you freedom to spend your time, how you like, when you like, where you like, with who you like. I'm not boasting this morning, but I want you to know that I'm not here today because I have to be. I'm not here because I can't make it if I don't get an offering. I'm not here today because I have to be. I'm here today because I want to be here. And I want to tell you that it's one of the most freeing things in the world to be financially free. Be able to do whatever God would lay on your heart, whatever God would want you to do. To have the time and the freedom to do it. And what this is all about is as I've experienced it and I'm living it right now, and I want it for you. I want it for you. And that's what today is all about. And young people, we've got a good group of young people. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope you're paying attention this morning. And I challenge you, be back this evening at 5 o'clock. You might say, well, I'm just 16 years old. You're perfect for tonight. You're perfect. I just finished mentoring a 22-year-old man in my church. He's been in my church for many years, very close to his family. He started listening to my financial teaching and financial principles as just a teenager. And he's 22 years old, got a great job, totally debt-free, college bill paid, every bill paid, driving a really nice yellow Camaro, all paid for. And so thankful and grateful for Pastor's teaching. If you're young, don't think it doesn't apply to you. You're the best ones to hear this. Please come back tonight to hear it. Amen. How many older people have come to me over the years and said, I wish I'd have heard your teaching 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Well, listen, if you're young, if you're a teenager or 20s or 30s or 40s, you still got even the early 50s, man, and everybody needs to come, but especially you. There's still time for you. And young people, if I could say one thing and one thing only to you, it would be this. Most people, in fact, 90% of Americans today are trying to dig out of a hole, trying to dig out of a financial hole. Can I say this to you, young person? The most important thing you'll hear me say is this: don't dig the hole. Your mom and your dad, your grandma and grandpa's in a hole. Don't dig the hole. Don't buy into the American dream. Don't do what everybody else is doing because everybody else is drowning in a sea of debt. Don't dig the hole. And if you don't dig the hole, think about what you could do with your income and where you could be in a very short time.